Hello everyone and welcome to lecture 10 on ACCA P7 Advanced Audit and Assurance. This one was on transnational audits. So first question then, what is a transnational audit? Well, it's simply an audit that's relied upon outside the entity's home jurisdiction. So things we've got to consider then, if you're relying on an audit outside of an entity's home jurisdiction, the values, ethics and attitudes may be different between the two jurisdictions, and the culture also may be different, so you've got to consider these various aspects. The group components as well may be audited by another auditor, the scope may differ in the other jurisdiction, and the local environment may be different, which will impact the reporting. Also, of course, there may be language difficulties and foreign exchange translation. So specific differences then when it comes to transnational audits. Well, the listing requirements. Remember that if the parent is listed, it's bound by the rules of the country in which it is listed. The subsidiary then will also be bound by those rules. So we've got to make sure that they are aware of that. Subsidiaries should be aware that they are bound by the rules of the country in which the parent is listed. Corporate governance. Well, the parent again is bound by the country of listing, and the subsidiary therefore is also bound. Particularly important if the parent is a US firm, because you will be bound as a subsidiary by the Sarbanes-Oxley legislation, which we talked about in one of our early lectures. Okay, so financial reporting standards as well. We've got to remember here that the subsidiary may have local requirements, which means that it may not be in line with the parent. What we've got to do then is make adjustments to make sure that the reporting standards used comply with the parent's reporting standards. Again, when it comes to audit, the standards again may differ between the different jurisdictions. So if they don't conform to the IAS, if that's what you're using, then you have got to do extra work to make sure that they do. Okay, so these are the main differences in a transnational audit. The Transnational Audit Committee then, what does it do? We've heard mention of it in our first lecture. It identifies practice issues around transnational audits. It then recommends to IFAC and the IAASB if there are any issues that need maybe looked at, or new ISAs, or different recommendations to the ISAs. It also proposes members to the IFAC Regulation Liaison Group and identifies candidates for the IFAC boards that we talked about in the first week. It also provides a conduit between the transnational firms, i.e. the Big Four, and the regulators if there's any issues that come up, such as quality issues or compliance and transparency issues. These will be talked about through the Transnational Audit Committee between the transnational firms and the regulators. Some other issues. Well, globalization is a big issue at the minute. Some issues around that. Well, it means that local businesses may be foreign owned, so back to the listing requirements and the corporate governance requirements. They may be required to comply with listing requirements from a foreign nationality. There's now movement of goods across national boundaries, which again provides issues with the auditor and how to keep track of those. To audit at such a high level requires resources, which generally leads to larger audit firms. This now is resulting in cooperation firms or co-op firms, where firms work together. They're not part of the same firm, but they work together to do transnational audits. Current issues. Well, this surrounds mergers between audit firms, potentially leading to less competition in the market, and the provision of other services by audit firms. The rules in the US said that the auditor couldn't provide other services, but in other jurisdictions this is tending to start to reverse. The audit firm hierarchy lastly, remember that we've got our Big Four firms who are at the top of the audit firm hierarchy. Second tier firms may be able to do smaller transnational audits but with difficulty, and small firms who are just local firms who won't be able to do such audits. So that was our lecture on transnational audits.